The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
Mike and Tom are washing their mouths out with soap because the Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the 1997 Singles Edition. Today we're talking an American Werewolf in Paris. Oh boy. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards, joining me. The man who's gritting his gnarled teeth, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hello, Tom.
She's obviously whacked. A girl who jumps off the Eiffel Tower has clearly got problems.
Right.
You see,
I think that would end my infatuation with a woman.
Yeah. I think the first time I singled out this line, it was purely because it was clunky and
Dumb.
terrible. But
Yeah.
the more I look at it, the more I think, is this meant to be ironic? Because they're all jumping off the Eiffel Tower. And yet, in any other movie, I would say that was an ironic line, except this one. Except
that's the
specifically this one.
That's the thing that this movie has that I have not seen in any other movie in quite the same way is that this movie, it's the tone of it is out of control, and I don't think they're doing anything purposefully. Or when they're going, actually, I guess that's not true, because they're going for comedic bits that are never funny.
No, never.
So it's almost the polar opposite. Whenever they're trying to do one thing, they are doing the exact opposite in this movie.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
This is a strange movie, Tom.
It really is. I don't know what to do with it. I looking back at my notes, I really, perhaps more than any other movie we've done, I clung to comparisons to American Werewolf in London, which is never going to do this film favors. But it was about It was about the only way I could kind of rationalize it through that lens.
Well, so ladies and gentlemen, we are talking an American Werewolf in Paris, yet another 1997 film. This one's directed by Anthony Waller.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Anthony Waller?
All I know is that he plays a metro driver in the movie, so he clearly thinks he's Alfred Hitchcock.
Right. He's got the M. Night Shyamalan disease. Stop fucking putting yourself in your movies. But
you could also level that at Tarantino as well.
I could, yeah.
Yeah. And we have historically.
Yes, exactly. I'm seeing his other movies like Mute Witness, The Guilty, and 9 Miles Down. These are movies I don't know.
Is Mute Witness the last screen appearance of Alec Guinness? What year is that? Is Alec Guinness in that film?
1995?
I think that's Alec Guinness's last screen performance. He has a cameo as a Russian gangster.
He's in it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at that!
Look at you.
That is pretty impressive.
Why do you know that?
Apart from that seems like a similarly bad movie to this.
Mm-hmm.
I equate those two in my mind. I've never seen it, but I always heard it was terrible, and Alec Guinness is only in it for like 60 seconds. I think he just says the word kill, and that's it.
All right then, sir. If you say so.
And what were the others?
The Guilty, that's like a Bill Pullman movie, I believe.
Okay. What era of Bill Pullman?
Well, I want to say like in 2000.
Oh, okay. Say no more.
Yeah.
You're that far away from While You Were Sleeping in Independence Day. I know what it means to be in a Bill Pullman movie.
Come on, I like Bill Pullman.
I like Bill Pullman too.
Don't you start your shenanigans.
I'm not. I don't have an issue
everyone.
I'm just talking about his relative fame over the years.
All right, fine. Strangely, Tom, this movie, of the three movies, has the highest Rotten Tomato score at a whopping 7%.
Fuck that website.
That does not make any sense.
Now and forever. Which means this movie must have a fan base somewhere.
Right.
Which is completely alien to me, given that the other terrible sequels of 1997 do not seem to have this same hardcore.
Well, and also, I mean, you can tell that Speed 2 had a lot of money spent on it. You just look at the boat accident alone. But in regards to the other two films, for what you see on screen, because I believe I said Mortal Kombat was like $30 million of a budget. This one has $25 million for a budget. An opening weekend of 7.6, and in the USA and the world gathered $26.5 million. You know, $25 and $30 million. I'll give Mortal Kombat at least some, some travel money.
Yeah,
because they go places.
That's right. Well, they go to.
And I guess you could say the same thing about going to Paris, but.
Except they're not really plugging Paris in any way that looks expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, it surprises me that this movie has a high budget because they seem so thoroughly ashamed of their special effects. That money must have been spent on concealing how bad their special effects are, because that is all this movie does, is try to hide how bad it looks. That's its main. Yeah, but
it does that so poorly, Tom.
Well, because you can't polish a turd.
Right.
There's no in-camera effect that isn't in shadow, off screen, in a reflection, with strobe lighting over it. It's like we never get a clear look at what we're supposed to be seeing.
Before we move on, we were talking about the director, and we were talking about The Guilty, the Bill Pullman movie.
Yeah.
I wrote down the blurb, the description for this movie, because it so thoroughly made me laugh.
Yeah.
So here it is. A young person gets hired to kill someone completely unknown by someone equally unknown. Or is that true? Nothing is what it seems.
Oh, dear. That sounds like they went to the pitch meeting without an idea.
I had completely forgotten about that, and then looked at my notes and said, oh my God, I've got a note about The Guilty.
They turned up at the pitch movie, they realized the idea that they had been done, and it's like, we can talk our way out of this. What about a movie where nobody knows who the other person is?
All right, back to bad effects and werewolves in Paris.
Yeah.
Hey, when this movie started, when the credits started, what was your mindset?
Well, you've already alluded to this in a previous episode that you were sort of carried along a little bit, at least for the first few minutes of the movie.
The credits themselves had a real classic monster.
They did.
Monster movie feeling to them that I was rather enjoying.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. I think were it just a, original movie in its own right, I probably would have followed along with you. But the fact that they choose to start with panning down from the moon,
right,
exactly the same way American Werewolf in London begins, but it's this kind of conventional choral hymn rather than Bad Moon Rising.
Yeah,
it's like, they copied John Landis's shot, except they removed the humor.
The humor from it, right?
They removed the humor and anything that might be interesting or distinctive about that. It did just feel like, it was just like a more conventional version of what we've already seen.
Yeah.
Without that, extra.
But the music itself specifically was enough for me to go, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic. It's, basic 90s Gothic cinema. It's like how...
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing the Eiffel Tower, but you're seeing gargoyles and churches. And
it was the gargoyles that made me think, like, this is stock footage from Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, it sort of starts like a Universal monster movie, doesn't it? With the scientist in the white coat running away from...
And you get the death. Yeah, you get the cabbie running towards
running
him
away from the monster.
Right.
But again, like, that's already disappointing because, and I hate the fact that I'm comparing so much, but you
already announced you're going to, so it's fine.
I know. But that was a genre or subgenre that John Landis riffed on. This is just pure pastiche. It's not interesting to me.
Okay.
So it's already made itself inferior by failing to pull off the same trick that the original did with the same material.
I didn't come in with this expectation of, I mean, how could I? That you're going to do what John Landis did.
You're doing your job better than I am on this podcast. You're doing a far better job and usually it's the other way around. You're doing a far better job distancing yourself.
Right. Right.
From the original than I am. I also found it interesting that John Landis's characters created by credits seem to disappear faster than the other credits.
Right. I clocked that too.
I'm glad you saw that too, because I was second guessing myself, but I thought, no, that did disappear.
No, I think I'm right. I think that left sooner than everything else has left. Which, previous and after.
It shows this kind of uncomfortable place this movie is, trying to follow up this kind of revered auteur classic of a horror movie. And then we're straight in with creature POV.
Mm-hmm.
Alien 3 has a lot to answer for.
You blame Alien 3, do you?
But that's when was Alien 3? It was early 90s, wasn't it? When was Alien 3? 93?
93, I think.
Yeah. So that's already a kind of hackneyed device by 97.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels so basic and bland. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, compared to the rest of the movie, it's fairly solid. It's on fairly solid ground.
Right.
But it's still the bar is low. And
you can go back further to Jaws and Halloween,
Fair enough, yeah. But I maybe I'm thinking about ill-advised creature POV, which is what Alien 3 brought to the table.
I think I'll save it. We're not at that series yet. I'm not going to start litigating now.
Oh, there's many things to enjoy about Alien 3, but
all right.
The creature POV is not one of them for me.
What I found...
Yes.
First of all, this movie is comically odd.
That's a really good way of putting it.
They do not understand, I think, what humor is in this movie. And...
That's true. I mean, that's entirely true.
We're meeting our boys for the first time at right after this cold open.
Yeah.
Or the cold open that follows the credits, right?
Simultaneous, I think.
Is it? Okay.
I think the credits begin as soon as we pan down from the moon, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah. But we have the credits, and then we have the death scene, right?
Yeah, and then we go to the train.
Yeah. So we're on the train, and I see like Beavis and Butthead writ large as influence all over these three guys.
Yeah. When they start talking about Daredevil and sex points on their trip.
Yes.
You get the message that we've updated to the young Americans of the 1990s.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that because that's when your movie's taking place.
Sure.
But you've simultaneously lost any empathy or attachment towards your characters.
Exactly. That was my note. Yeah.
So even Beavis and Butthead is, it's beyond Beavis and Butthead, because you're somewhat attached to those characters, even though you're aware they are not role models. But these guys, I instantly want to kill.
You want them all to die.
I want them all to die. Yeah.
And you hope nobody just gets bitten, because you don't want to see them for 90 more minutes.
The other thing that's really hard about this movie is that, it's obviously a creative mistake, but it feels like it's actually been quite influential.
Really? Well, how do you mean?
Well, okay, let me put it to you this way. Are there any movies that had yet to be made at this point that this film reminds you of? I can name at least 3.
Really?
That I
see, because this movie reminds me of no other movie.
Again, you're doing your job better than I am. But as soon as we got to that train, and I've written it down in real time, I went, Hostel.
Oh, wow. Well,
this is Hostel before its time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll save the others for later, but...
Okay. I mean, I can see why you would think that.
And again,
but I think because... I go back to the tone of the movie. Because the tone is so strange.
Yes.
I never make a leap of logic.
No.
That makes sense. What you're saying makes sense, but I never make that connection, because this movie is so unlike any other movie. Even though the setup is the same as Hostel. You're right.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, even down to I think there's 3 of them in Hostel as well.
I think
and
so.
That's something that the movie's added, because it was 2 in American Werewolf in London.
Right.
And now
we're up in the stakes, Tom. We're up in the stakes.
Well, we're up in the stakes.
Thing. We add one more guy.
We've also changed the nerd to jock ratio, so now it's 1 nerd, 2 jocks. Paris instead of London. That's your other big sequel inversion. 3 instead of 2 tourists. And then we're at the Eiffel Tower, which we just fucking saw in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. So, obviously, this was a big year for the Eiffel Tower in Hollywood cinema.
Yeah.
Everyone was clamoring to get the Eiffel Tower in their movie. If you were a shitty sequel.
Yeah, right. I feel like...
I mean, they couldn't have picked a more obvious landmark, right? They couldn't have...
Oh, no, yeah.
I would have gone with the catacombs, personally, given the subject matter. But,
given the subject matter, yeah.
To each their own.
It's a thought.
Yeah. Let's go full Superman 2.
And they're aspiring.
And I think
they're aspiring to Superman 2.
I think this is where, put the nail in the coffin of the characters for me, is the fact that they were breaking into the Eiffel Tower to climb
bungee
it
jump.
And bungee jump off.
And by the way, that's not even a bungee that they're using. It looks like a regular rope, which is going to kill you. It's going to just tear your legs off.
I didn't think you could overlight Paris, which is known for its night lights. But mid-90s American cinema managed it.
Right.
Can overlight anything. Even a city known for its luminosity.
That's funny. Well, and in addition, so my question to you was, well, narratively we're skipping some stuff. So the boys go to the boys go up to the top.
It doesn't matter.
You're right. They're gonna bungee, but they see Julie Delpy, who's apparently gonna commit suicide.
Right.
Now she jumps and he leaps with the rope attached to his foot, but not attached to the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
So the other boys have to grab the rope.
Correct.
Which, by the way, they were never going to hold on to, but I'll put that aside for now.
Yeah.
When he jumps over, is there a kind of Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes sound?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I didn't make a note of it, but I'm remembering it now in my memory that must have happened, right?
Yeah. It also looks like a cartoon because of the past CGI.
Everything. And that was my big my biggest note was the terrible CGI jump.
And I guess, if you...
And I actually wrote, laugh out loud, it's so absurd.
If you compare it directly to the other films we're doing in the series, there is obviously, I think, one of the reasons that the CGI appears so bad. I think specifically here I'm talking about when the wind measurements that they've got like a wind barometer.
We're also listening to Smash Mouth, aren't we?
Oh, don't go. Well, I'll get there. I'll get there. But there's obviously a trend towards replacing close-ups on objects that would have originally been previously been practical with CGI. So I'm thinking about the propeller in Speed 2.
Yeah, right.
And so, this is an object you're used to seeing practically.
Yes.
So the fact that you see it in CGI, and you're also cognitively thinking, why can't this just be the thing it is? How hard is it to get a close up of these objects in the real world? I think that adds to the distaste, with CGI is sort of like
because we're already going to see some terrible CGI once the wolves get involved. So how about at least give us a break on these normal world objects, the real world objects.
Right, and the movie can never straddle the line between practical and CGI because the practical stuff it has.
Yeah, it's not Terminator 2.
It looks like it looks like, it's like 1930s bad.
Yeah.
It's like, fur suits. And then the CGI is equally inept.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think the film sort of is trying to cinematically disguise what we're seeing on screen rather than doing what the original movie did, which was to put everything in camera to show you all the work that they'd done.
Yes. And they go out of their way to show you
this
David
movie
Naughton in the middle of a room completely and fully lit.
And I'd call that a sequel inversion if I didn't think it was down to basic incompetence of filmmaking, which I really think it is.
Yeah,
I don't think it's anyone's choice, but I feel like it was damage limitation time. They just had to, if we see this in camera without cutting away or disguising it with lighting or with editing,
right,
this will look so laughable we won't be able to get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good start.
Good times.
It only goes on from there.
No, that's right. Yeah, we've talked about the best part of the movie for one of us.
We did. All right, why don't we take a break and then we'll come back? How about that?
Sure.
All right. Right after this, everyone. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here trying to figure out what the hell happened with An American Werewolf in Paris, the 1997 film directed by nobody you know. This is where, pretty much the film gets even weirder. Because all the characters are doing things that they would probably never do.
Right.
Once a woman literally jumps off the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
And you jump to save her like Batman.
Yeah.
Getting Kim Basinger.
Also, that love theme sting. Like, if that happened in a soap opera, you'd think it was on the nose.
Right.
And then, like, as you say, Smash Mouth comes in. Which is hilarious because, I've seen parodies about the overuse of Smash Mouth's
right.
Walking on the Sun in late 90s, early 2000 media. And this is what's being parodied.
Yeah, exactly.
Specifically. This is not part of the parody. This is what's being parodied.
The parody.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But, so there is... I can't think of a reason for Tom Everett Scott to go find Julie Delpy at this point. He's just got goo-goo eyes.
I've got a reason for you.
The script must have it so.
Unchecked toxic masculinity.
Yeah, right.
I don't care what she's doing. I'm sure it's heinous. He has no right to barge into her house like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And throughout the rest of the film, those three guys come over to her house and walk inside uninvited.
Constantly.
And that is just not acceptable. It wasn't acceptable then. It's not acceptable now.
Hey, what do you make of, talking specifically about the actors? There are two actors that most of us know in Tom Everett Scott and Julie Delpy.
Mm-hmm.
And then a bunch of actors I don't know, including...
Right. Well, Julie Bowen.
Yeah, we do know Julie Bowen. But his bumbling friends... I mean, I have so many notes.
They are just meat. They're just meat in the room.
Yeah, I have so many notes that are
a couple of six
along the lines of these are the worst actors I've ever seen. But what do you make of? What do you make of? Like, so what do you think of Tom Everett Scott and Julie Delpy in this movie? Because their acting choices aren't much better than these other people, and yet they've gone on to have careers, and we know them.
Yeah. I don't...
And I can't figure out, like with Tom Everett Scott, I can't figure out if I'm watching somebody at the beginning of his career or if I'm watching somebody who's being directed by somebody to telling him to do ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And I feel the same about Julie Bowen.
She's too bland. He's too...
vanilla.
Well, just, too action-y.
Yeah.
He's doing too much, she's doing too little.
He looks like he's modeling his performance after a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Right. Which you'd think was the case in the original, given, given the sort of John Landis and his directorial style, but it's actually just not the case. There's some really balanced performances, but there's no balance in any of these performances.
Right.
Once Julie Bowen gets in the movie, I did breathe a sigh of relief because she's a pretty good goofball.
Yeah.
And when she's in charge of the comedy and the sequence, you do notice a bit of a lift.
A little bit, but she's also hampered, I think, a little bit by, it balloons a little bit. It's a little bigger than...
Well, literally.
Than everything...
You literally have
than everything else around her. But I don't know if that...
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not... I'm trying to find...
something.
Yeah, I say, like, you were asking me about the actors, and the only one I noticed as someone who is a decent goofball for this kind of... for this sort of tone that they're going for.
Yeah.
That she gelled with it better than everyone else in the movie, which is to say that she gelled at all.
And it doesn't really affect Delpy because she's never going for a comedic moment ever.
She doesn't open her eyes when
she's just there.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't... I mean, it's really interesting as well, because I remember hearing John Landis talk about American Werewolf in London and how it begins with the two main characters getting off a truck full of sheep,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, I've never been one for subtlety.
Right.
But I think, like, if you go to the cafe scene in this,
Yeah.
with a condom balloon,
Yeah, exactly.
tissue, cups breaking, coffee spilling, I'm
His
like,
friends,
he can self-critique your own lack of subtlety, but John Landis never did anything
nothing like
the
that.
likes of
Exactly.
this. He had Nazi zombies in this film, and I still think that's more subtle than what happens in this
cafe
scene.
date scene. His friends are watching him and Julie Delpy like the German weirdos in Mannequin 2 on the Move.
Mm-hmm.
Or watch, you know what I mean?
There's also that French WWF man.
Yes, yes.
And there's so much ADR in this film.
Yeah.
It feels like everyone's dialogue was dubbed later. And people changing voices is actually important to the plot at some point.
Right.
So it's a bigger
big
problem
than they
it
realize.
even would be.
Also, I
guarantee all of Julie Delpy's dialogue is ADR.
Right. And I also notice in this scene, in particular in this date scene in the cafe, there's some remarkably bad editing going on. I have a note of.
Yeah.
It
You're
just
right,
looks
which
completely inept.
Right. Yeah. When you're doing a sequence of sight gags, that's the worst
exactly
combination.
That's so terrible. Oh my goodness. What's Julie Delpy throw? I have a note here that she throws something, but I can't even
a cup?
A cup at the angry guy at WWF?
Think so, yeah. I've got coffee, condoms, tissue, cup. That's the sequence of gags.
That's a t-shirt.
And then French dub. Oh, I got you. I got a band name for you later on in this film.
Nice. I'm excited. Well, of course, it's somewhere around here. I believe all the boys are invited to the full moon party because this movie's subtle.
At Club de Lune?
Yeah.
Eurotrash meets Gothic literature.
Not suspicious at all, I wrote.
Everyone's idea of what French horror would look like without doing any prior research. Eyes without a face? No. It's like this. That said, though, Blade is only a year away, and I definitely got some Blade vibes.
I got Blade vibes as well.
The Eurotrance and the werewolf subculture in the club. So again, I have a horrible feeling this movie has its finger on the pulse.
Yeah, we talked about in Mortal Kombat that it felt like, a high school project given a lot of money. And that's what this felt like when you compare it to like a Blade. Yeah. Say what you want about Blade, but Blade has production value involved. It looks like a movie.
But they're hitting notes that later movies will pick up on, which I find fascinating. Right. Like, I don't think this is as an insignificant movie as I would like to think it is. Because I think I can see the road to Hostel and Hostel 2, and I can see the road to Blade. And there's another later on in this film. There's another big.
I'd like to think it's coincidental, though.
It might just be cultural rather than deliberate, but I don't. It's a lot of coincidences that all kind of historically make sense. Right. But anyway.
I have a note here. So, basically, the guys handing out the flyers are all werewolves, and they're just... So particularly, they have a hankering for Americans, it seems.
Okay, is that ever explained?
No, I don't think so. See, so I can't decide, are Americans delicious, or do they hate Americans? Is it that French thing of, we hate Americans, we want to kill them, or what's the deal?
The movie never... exactly. The movie never decides. It never tells us specifically yet. That's the operational theory of the movie, if you're going to make any sense out of it. But this begins a trend of story points that retroactively ruin American Werewolf in London for me. So now all I can think about is, Americans are tasty, and that's why they get attacked in the first scene.
You can't. You allow these things to infect you like Inception. Like,
yeah,
come on, it's okay.
Oh, but there's more. No, there's more. I can't unsee it. There's more coming as well. That's why I truly despise this film. It's because it ruins another film in the process. And this is just the beginning. This Americans taste tasty, and that's why.
Right.
It's again. We talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi off mic, and we talked about all these, like making something canon,
right?
That you only ever half thought about, and has been left vague for decades, and that
but also for a reason, maybe right?
Yeah, and it deprives you of that kind of ambiguity that you can think your way around. And this is kind of doing the same thing. It's like the joys of American Werewolf in London lie in all these ambiguities about what's going on with the werewolves, and this movie tries to pin down every single one of them, even the questions you never asked. And classic example of that is Americans are tasty. Never crossed my mind before. It's because they were out on the fucking moor in the
where they shouldn't have been.
Where they shouldn't have been, which is made very clear in the film. That is the narrative reason.
Right.
It's not a mythological reason.
It's not like the werewolves in London would have not attacked the British villagers because they're just not as tasty.
Right. It's also not as if the werewolves in London necessarily talk to the werewolves in Paris.
Right.
For one thing, they seem to be an entirely different species of werewolf, with no physical resemblances. Goes back to Fred Willard in Best in Show. Just with the animals.
Yes.
Do you think all the dogs have different accents? Do you think they talk in different accents depending on where they're from?
Now, what are they doing? I love Fred Willard. So good. So one of my biggest notes for this moment, because basically they've invited all these people to this party just so that they could eat them.
Yeah.
But I just thought, like, my biggest note was I thought it was hysterical how the strobe lights came in just to try and cover, like you said, their terrible CGI.
Yeah, we're not seeing anything clearly in terms of werewolf transformations. Which is an inversion, but I think it's an accidental one.
Yeah, right.
I think they would rather it the other way around.
But, and there's always, so...
There's no... I think a bigger problem... I mean, quality of effects is a huge problem.
Right.
But the biggest problem for me is there's no consistent look to the werewolf.
Yeah, no.
And some of that is CGI practical confusion. But they haven't decided what animal they want the werewolf to look like. Sometimes it looks like a lion, sometimes a gorilla, sometimes it looks closer to the original idea of what it is, but from scene to scene it's different.
Yeah. From scene to scene, the only consistency is it's not good.
It's not good and you don't see it all. And then, there's some very you've already mentioned, like, underwhelming editing choices.
Yeah, right.
Or inept editing choices. This fade to black mid-scene that they do a few times.
Yeah, right.
It just looks like a commercial break.
It does.
It's just like, is it just there to help the people, the television programmers know where to put the breaks?
You know what I notice about that too? Because it's not like this is the only movie that does that, but I've noticed in other I haven't watched this movie on television, but are you ever watching one of those movies where that happens and then they don't cut to commercial? And it kind of pisses you off.
Oh, they never.
They gave you a moment.
But yeah, they're trying to create. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to create suspense around what's happening in that period we don't see. But it's.
But that's never what it makes you feel. So
It fragments an already fragmented movie. Probably and I'm, at this point, I think this is maybe my two favorite moments of the movie are in this section of the film.
What, when they're chasing down in the catacombs, or?
Oh, no. The heart shake.
Okay.
That was a good 10 seconds. I was like, yeah, I used like that says to me, American Werewolf in London, but in the 90s.
Yeah.
Putting a heart in a blender and making a shake out of it. It's like, okay, I could get with that. When the werewolf in the hospital bed, when they accidentally go into the closet, open the closet, thinking it's an exit, I thought, yeah, that's a good moment in a horror film, in like a comedy horror film. Problem is these are like 10-second bursts, and there's nothing good between them.
No, yeah, so, right. This movie just languishes from scene to scene. So, I mean, he's at that party, he gets bitten, and then Seraphin takes him back to her house for the heart shake. And we have
the werewolf double dream.
Right, werewolf double dream, and then we also have the bit. Who is it that he's seeing? Is it her mom? And her mom's dead?
Yeah.
So we're trying to get that bit with Griffin done.
Again, but up the ante, so there's like everyone in the cast.
But here it comes across as very clunky.
Yeah, and
until we,
they don't have the makeup,
right?
They don't have the prosthetics, so everything.
And then they try
like
to repeat that bit with Julie Bowen, and they're doing CGI shit, like with her eye popping out, right?
Looking at her own breasts,
right? Yeah,
just to show you that. I mean, adolescent sex comedy is the real genre of this movie.
Yes.
It's just people, it's like looking at women's cleavage, women looking at their own cleavage because they're just so hot they would objectify themselves if they could.
Of course.
Actually, in this scene, we've got like Seraphine. She manages to cover up her nudity, but it feels dirtier than if she'd just gone topless.
Right.
But anyway, the werewolf double dream is another one of my retrospective ruination moments.
Well, because it doesn't...
Because they say, it's normal for the transition periods to have all these hallucinations. It's like, no, that was never a thing. It's got nothing to do with him being a werewolf. Or if it does, I don't want to know about it. I don't want this to happen every time someone turns into a werewolf. Doesn't need to be
right. Every time you see someone get bit, you go, "Oh, well, so soon we'll get the double dream."
He's gonna have the double dream. At this point, we get the best comic actor in the movie, which is the dog. There's a reaction shot from a dog where he's doing some great work.
I don't remember it.
Outacting many of the other.
Well, because one of his friends dies at the party, and then the other one, Seraphine, puts in jail. Right? I mean, a jail in her own home, which she usually keeps herself in to keep from. So, for those listening at home, she is a werewolf herself, but she doesn't want to be a werewolf. She doesn't like the idea of killing people, so she locks herself up.
Reluctant werewolf.
Yeah.
She's the Christian Bale of werewolves. She's a reluctant werewolf.
That's great.
Actually, I've got another good moment here. The French policeman bags a dismembered arm. It's like,
oh yeah,
this is what I want a werewolf horror comedy in Paris to be like, the whole way through. And it's really interesting that obviously they've changed the location from Britain to Paris, and yet they seem to be splitting the difference where there's as many British people in Paris as there are French.
Right.
So they're trying to play to both sides of that. Or maybe they just simply don't know the difference.
I wrote that the inspector is complete with a pipe, but I also couldn't figure out why the cops just let him go. They're interviewing him about all the murders, and then all of a sudden we just sort of ephemerally, like the scene just sort of,
Yeah.
and the next thing you know, he's in a haze walking outside, and I thought, well, what the fuck did he let him go for?
Speaking of Julie Bowen, I really wanted Phil Dunphy's character from Muppets Most Wanted to play the French police officer,
Right.
her co-star from Modern Family.
Yeah.
Because I think, like in that there's an in-world excuse for why the French policeman's not doing his job. It's because he's got to go on his mandated 2-hour lunch break and things like that. Whereas here, it just seems like a custom in French law enforcement that you just leave your suspect unhandcuffed, in the
to leave at his leisure.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. Well, I don't know what. Maybe let's take another break because we're starting to transition into the Bowen part of this movie, and then we're gonna rapidly approach the end. How's that sound?
The Bowen sound.
Yes. We'll come back to Bowen right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
Tom and I are back once again, ladies and gentlemen, finishing up with An American Werewolf in Paris, yet another 1997 single sequel. The biggest disappointment of them all.
Yes.
Man.
And that's saying something.
Right? Well, as I was saying before we went to break, we're to the Bowen part of this movie. And so we meet her late.
Uh-huh.
Like, we meet a major character in this movie.
What a weird character to introduce halfway through the movie.
Yeah, right?
And this was one of the points where I thought you could have built a sequel around this character.
Yeah, exactly.
And it might work. Like
especially if you wanted to make a more comedic take.
Well, yeah, but you just gender swap it,
mm-hmm.
and that's your inversion, and you might be able to craft a more interesting sequel out of it. But that's not what women are here for in this movie.
Right.
It's just about looking down their bras.
Of course.
I don't know. Like, if I was being generous, I'd say they're trying to reference Animal House, but I think the truth is it's sub-Animal House.
Right, yes.
Sub-Porkies.
So for those at home who have not seen the film...
Yeah.
Essentially, he just sees her on the street, right?
She comes into the cafe.
Like in another cafe.
Yeah.
And he's starting to act more because he's getting like his fourth steak rare or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And for some reason, she finds this amusing and attractive.
Yeah. Well, also, for some reason, again, this movie is sort of made like slut shaming a werewolf power.
Right.
Because his friend says you would have never looked twice at that bimbo in there.
Right.
Before. It's like, why is that a werewolf power? You're just being extra toxic. You're already pretty toxic. How is that a werewolf power?
Heightens your toxicity.
It's like a couple of teenagers tried to rewrite and refilm the Griffin Dunn scenes from American Werewolf in London from memory.
Having not seen it in a few decades.
It's like when I tried to recreate the movie The Untouchables, having seen it once with my friends at school. It was more legends than canon, I'll tell you that much.
Right.
We got past... Al Capone was caught very early on in our version, and we were off to sea to find treasure.
So I remember trying to keep all of this Bowen stuff straight in my head. They meet.
Yeah. They have sex on Jim Morrison's grave.
So yeah, they go to the cemetery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's.
Which I know Jim Morrison is a celebrity and a cult icon, but he's a real person. Seems a little ghoulish to have sex on his grave. I don't know if that.
I cannot disagree.
Americans do, but it's like, why did we have to rope Jim Morrison into this?
And also, doesn't he turn into a werewolf in the middle of sex?
Yeah.
So he's got werewolf penis.
And that's I like the I like the lipstick, the dog penis lipstick. And this is what I mean about Julie Bowen being a good goofball. It's a blessing for the movie that she takes over the comedy for this particular section.
This moment, right?
Yeah. And then we have another fade to black.
Right. But not before again, it's like because the cops are there too, and they're looking for him, and she's going into tombs and then out of tombs.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets her, right? He kills her? Do I have that right? Because my next note is...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does, yeah. Because she comes back as a...
corpse.
Yeah. Along with Ghost Bro.
Right.
She comes back to life.
Yeah.
Think of all the painstaking makeup and animatronics that Griffin Dunn had, and this slapped on goth makeup.
Exactly. But I also have.
It looks like it comes from. It doesn't even look like it comes from the same universe.
Right. No. That's the thing. This movie's building mythology that we never asked for, or that we never got or asked for from the first movie.
Yeah, that's my biggest beef with it.
And.
Or buff. That's my biggest buff. It's the worst joke anyone's ever made. Please cut that
out. Never. But, so the thing that really bothers me about this movie is that it's imposing that on the original movie, despite,
yeah,
movie,
that's it. That's my big
simultaneously feels like it has nothing to do with an American Werewolf in London.
No.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
And so when it's doing that, it's really aggravating.
It's really aggravating once they get to the, the cure section of the film.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the worst part.
All bets are off at that point because there's no.
But before we get there, Tom, I got to ask you because.
Oh no, I'm just bringing that up.
Well, I'm just curious because after he kills her, there's a moment where he gets into a morgue drawer, and somehow that's how he escapes.
Uh-huh.
Is there a hole in it? I don't remember this ever being explained. He gets into a drawer and then he's somewhere else.
Well, it's just the police. Yeah. He gets himself out.
All right.
The police I mean.
Meaning they just think he's gone and then they leave the room and he gets out?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the part that I found hard to believe.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wouldn't you check all the drawers first before you left? That's where I would think he is.
Not in French law enforcement.
Okay.
Clearly. But we've seen Weekend at Bernie's too. We know that's only a temporary state of death. And then they have a British cop superior, or she sounds British the first time you see her, and then the second time she's French. Again, splitting the difference. between the two movies.
But we never see her after that, do we?
We see her once again,
Or
and then
we see her at the end.
Then she sounds French, so I don't know I don't know which part they ADR'd. Is what I say. Like, I don't know whether they de-Frenched her or de-Britished her.
Well, it's this section of the movie where I really started to feel like, boy, we're trying to, eke out the 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or however long.
And as you say, add a lot of needless mythology. Eat the heart of the werewolf that bit you.
Yeah, right. Well, you were referencing the Cure part of this movie, so.
But the Cure, and also, so they've made Julie Delpy the werewolf. But
yeah, we forgot to mention that when the bro was in the jail earlier, he does escape by taking off all his clothes. Mm-hmm. But he also finds
which is
werewolf.
Probably how he was cast.
He finds a werewolf on a gurney.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a Frankenstein scenario.
Yes.
Being experimented on. But really, it's Julie Delpy trying to find a cure.
But they can't even keep that. Yeah, they can't even keep that mythology straight, because the cure is what turns her into a werewolf. So that's needlessly complicating.
Everybody else takes the cure to inject themselves and immediately turn into wolves when they otherwise have to wait for a full moon, right?
This film mistakenly thinks that it's science fiction,
right,
rather than fantasy. I think that's a big issue here, and the original, there's not really a sense of that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's definitely no attempt to explain where the werewolves came from, other than where they come from in all werewolf movies.
Right, yes.
And again, you see it sort of like turns into Twilight all of a sudden, with Andy rejecting his werewolf identity.
Yeah.
And suddenly our hero, like, it's much less interesting to have a hero who's fighting against what he's turned into.
Yeah.
Versus what it is in the original movie, which is a kind of tragic figure. Like, he can't help being what he is.
He has to. Right.
But Andy is sort of like making the choice not to be a werewolf, and that made me think of Twilight. And I choose not to be what I am.
Yes. I'll just eat animals.
Right. I'll just eat animals, and I guess there's werewolves in that as well, with the same dilemma. Yeah, and then the cure is like Deus Ex Machina, goes against the spirit of the original.
Yeah.
It's not it's not good. It's not not where I wanted this movie to go.
Aren't there kind of two cures? I mean, they're working on the potion cure, but also if you kill the wolf that attacked you, then you go back to being a human?
Yeah, you just need one of those.
Okay.
And I would argue none.
Right.
We made a perfectly good, if not classic, movie without it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's moments in this film where it feels like footage is actually missing from scenes.
It's like Homer's brain after a night of drinking.
Yeah,
Scene
exactly.
Deleted.
when Andy and Julie Delpy are having sex in the bathroom,
mm-hmm.
and they're being chased out by the werewolf cult.
Yeah.
There looks like there's a whole scene missing that tells us how they got from one scene to the other.
Yeah, the whole thing is bumbling because, like I was saying earlier, it feels like we're really trying to get to, an hour and 38 or so minutes, however long, like it's an hour and 35 or something, this movie. Because we even include a car chase. So I noticed that, he shows up to Seraphin's at one point. All the bad wolves are there. They chase him away, and he just goes back to the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And then gets chased again, and then they're in cars, and there's like a comedic car pileup.
Right, which makes me, again, this is my other movie, which came out like a year later, Taxi.
Right.
Goes on to be this huge franchise. The car chase scene is just that. This movie has its finger on the button in a weird way. of what
don't
movies
know.
will be, but it can't make a good movie out of what it has. It's fascinating. Here's my my band name if you want it.
Yes.
Julie Bowen Bloodspurt.
That might be more of a... Did you say band name? Might be more of an album title.
Okay, Julie Bowen Bloodspurt. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah. It's a good one, though.
It's
I like it.
And after that, yeah, this is what I mean about science fiction. We have the chalkboard with the science of werewolves. I mean,
right.
If there's one thing you don't need in a werewolf movie, it's a science lesson about how werewolves came into being. Even Twilight doesn't descend to that.
Right.
And they got the time. They have the screen time to go into it, and they choose not to.
Oh, I don't know. I find myself at the end of this movie, and I don't even care about anything that happens in it.
Well, once we're back in the club, right?
Is it the same one or a different one? Though?
Oh, it's a different location,
different church, right?
Different church, right?
Yeah.
And then this is it's like needlessly offensive to Americans, French people, and Christians. Like it's sort of like it just starts throwing out offensive depictions of national or religious identity. Just kind of comes thick and fast. And I agree with you. I think it is just to get to, like, they're rushing to get to their running time. They're not thinking about who they offend along the way, because and it's sort of weirdly non-specific. So we know that the French werewolves love the Americans,
mm-hmm.
and this is a July 4th party, isn't it?
I think so.
But does the movie know the connection between America and France and the War of Independence, like Lafayette? I don't get a sense that they do. I think someone pointed that out, like at the premiere. It was like, oh, there was a French general.
By the way, and then everybody involved in the movie said, "No shit."
Yeah. And I think with all the crucifix imagery.
Mm-hmm. Because the last friend is strapped to a cross.
Right.
And he's got to rock back and forth out of it, and then he's carrying it around with him. He's still attached but walking.
And it kind of shows how this movie can't differentiate werewolves from vampires or Satanists.
Right.
Especially when they come out in their monk robes.
Mm-hmm.
Which provides a nice little smokescreen for not seeing them turn into werewolves.
Not seeing them turn into werewolves, right.
And we find new ways to hide the bad work.
Yeah, exactly. And the cops come too, right? So,
mm-hmm.
In these types of movies, I can't even remember. Do all the cops live? Or because some die, right? Does the main boss, does the lady die when she sees that wolf underneath the road?
Know. I didn't clock that if she did.
I honestly can't remember.
Mm.
But it's, in a movie like this, you always have a group of people that are hearing the tall tales.
Yeah.
And you can go one of two ways. They never believe it and then suddenly they die.
Mm-hmm.
Or they never believe it and never see it.
Yes.
Those are the two choices, right?
Right.
And this one kind of splits the middle. It's like
true.
They don't all die, but they also find out.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
And you think these wolves look bad on their own? Try showing them all together in the same shot.
Oh,
boy,
man.
You're into a whole new level of effects ineptitude.
Mm-hmm.
And they also forgo what might have been a point of dramatic interest, which is that Andy has to kill Seraphine. Like, they toy with that for a minute or so, and then it's like,
so they
actually no, we'll just do some slapstick.
Well, do they originally make you think that it was her that bit him?
Yeah, because it wasn't.
Because it was the main
They
bad
walked
guy.
that back. It was just like the bad werewolf. Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. Like, they.
But then he shoots her, right?
Who?
He thinks that it's another wolf, and Andy shoots Seraphine. Do I have that right?
I don't think it gets that far. I think that whole, again, like it's too dramatically interesting for this movie. So they.
That's what surprised me. I was like, this movie, all of a sudden you're gonna do something. You think you're gonna pull that stunt? Yeah. I can't remember. Was it one of the other bad guys? Somebody shoots her. But then she ends up not dying anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
They walk it back.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's fucking dumb.
It is. And we go on the metro train.
Yeah, I was going to say, they extend this chase scene. I mean, they're already in the, kind of catacomb underneath. I guess all churches have catacombs underneath them.
But not the famous catacombs
But not the catacombs.
Just a generic underground cave. That would have been the time, guys, to...
Just saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's that expensive to film.
But it's like then they extend an already, I guess you could call it as interesting as this movie's going to get. We got cave chases, but then they fall through a hole and go into the metro system.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got to deal with subway cars and shit.
Yeah. It's not even that interesting, really.
No.
Or nor is it that Parisian, again.
Yeah, right.
I guess the metro is kind of iconic of Paris, but it's not something you can't get in New York or London if you wanted to. And they have once we get on the train, right? Again, they have to compensate for the fact that there's nothing scary or threatening about the werewolf that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So the fear is that there's too many people on the train. That becomes the source of
That's what we're dealing with.
That's what we're dealing with, not what should be the threat, which is that there's a werewolf on the train.
And Andy has to make the choice, right? He doesn't he inject himself or something so he can become his werewolf to defeat the other bad guy werewolf?
Yes.
From killing all the people on the train?
Mm-hmm.
And someone else? Julie Delpy wasn't there, right? She was already shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, this movie's dumb.
It's very dumb. But we're not done.
I know.
Because we've got several full moons later.
Mm-hmm.
Last minute time lapse. Once again, anticipating bad movies in the future, which also pull a lot of this shit.
What specifically?
Oh no, just not the trend towards time lapse.
Okay.
Unnecessary.
I thought you had a specific movie in mind, though. No. Okay.
No. But you could at least keep this movie, in some kind of Aristotelian unity. You don't have to have. And it's a happy ending, which I guess is an inversion of the original ending. Which is
we're gonna bungee without bungees again. But we're at the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, that's the other thing. We've left Paris.
Yeah.
Now, for no reason.
Right.
So we've undone everything in the final sequence. And again, this sequence has the untied rope is a desperate attempt to inject some stakes into an utterly meaningless epilogue.
Right.
It's a non sequitur, is what it is.
Yes, right.
It's not an epilogue. It's a non sequitur. That's all I have. It's.
That's all I have too. I mean, this is a dumb movie.
Yeah.
Desperately trying at times. It's trying to be so much more comedic than the first movie. The first movie
really is, which is a comedy.
Yeah.
And directed by John Landis.
But the first movie, John Landis gets comedy.
Yeah, well,
he understands what funny is.
This movie shows you when you try and do this material without someone like John Landis behind the camera.
Yeah.
This is what you're in danger.
It's ill-advised.
And again, I've said this again and again. on this podcast, but the most important, if you're making a comedy film, the most important person is the director.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like that should be true. But again and again, we find that it is.
Right.
Bad direction on a comedy movie can ruin it more than having unfunny people on screen somehow.
That's great. Credit check?
Yeah.
Don't get too excited.
No, I won't. Believe me, I won't. The music in the credits was so bad. I wrote the note. Let's go back to Smash Mouth. I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
That's the first and last time.
But
you'll
also,
say that.
but again, this movie is bad, but also random. And there's the song they choose to end the film with conforms to this completely, because it's a song that contains the lyrics. Well, not the lyrics. This is the kind of chorus, I guess you might loosely call it. It goes, like your mouth, 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 mouth. What the fuck is this song? And what does it have to do with this movie? This movie isn't about mouths.
Unless they mean mouths with pointy teeth.
Fangs? Sure.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
the mouths that are the issues with vampires.
With great big pointy teeth.
It's, this is a new one on me. Latin lyrics by... I assume that refers to the opening song. I don't know why it needs a sole credit. This was a surprise to me. Live animal reference. Doesn't look like the werewolves are based on any real animals.
No, yeah.
At least not dogs. Which is... The name seemed to suggest that they're dogs that they were based on. If it had been gorillas or lions, I would have gone, okay, maybe. Legal services by a firm led by Tenenbaum.
No.
Yes.
That's...
So this is the crossover we need. Get Gene Hackman out of retirement.
Exactly. If that character was involved in this movie, it would make sense.
Just the list of artists involved in the soundtrack was interesting to me. It's obviously Smash Mouth, Cake, Bush, The Refreshments, who are best known for the King of the Hill theme song.
Wow.
And it just occurred to me that another kind of missed lesson from the original movie is that the soundtrack of American Werewolf in London is not contemporary.
Right.
It's not tied to the moment it's made in. There's songs from the 40s, the 70s.
Yeah.
It kind of, and I think to sort of anchor this movie in bands that reek of the moment and always will.
It certainly
is doing it a disservice.
It's an anchor.
Yeah. Oh, I've no idea why a Cake cover of a Barry White song is on this soundtrack. And that's the other thing. It's like I can't help but comparing. All the songs in the original movie had purpose.
Yeah.
Whereas when I listen to the songs of these movies, I can't connect connect them to the movie. Like
what I'm
Bad
seeing
Moon,
on
Bad
screen.
Moon Rising, Blue Moon.
Right.
But here I'm like, Never Gonna Give You Up by Cake.
Question mark?
Yeah. So, yeah. Maybe
right.
I mean I don't know. Did they ever see American Werewolf in London? Did someone describe it to them? Is that
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It feels like nobody ever watched that movie before making this movie. Anything left for you?
No, that's
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't like it. But if you have a differing opinion, by all means, you're going to have to let us know. What do you think of An American Werewolf in Paris? Find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter. Send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart, he's from Lonesome Whistle Productions. Michael Shantz here. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next time, we'll be pitching a sequel to one of these movies.
My God.
Wish us the best of luck.
Can we just forego the format for this series? Do we just write off 1997 as a bad idea?
I quit. Say goodbye to the good people, Tom.
I love you, Americans!
That's great. All right. Until next time, everyone.